Welcome to Young People.
Say.
This is a talk show for young people where they come together from all walks of life to talk about issues which affect them as young people. We want to say to our viewers that what these young people will be talking about is actually representative of the views of young people from all over. It's not necessarily their views. So this is a disclaimer so that they can be free to really represent other young people out there. Today we have got a topic that we want to talk about, which is about it's a very queer topic, toxic homes. Toxic homes. Young people nowadays, they cannot wait to leave home. You will find that even at primary school, young people would want to go to boarding school. When it comes to university, they'd rather apply to a university far away from home or even from across the country. And we are worried about what is pushing young people to move out of home. And you find that if young people get an opportunity of getting employed, they would want to go and start their own home even before they are married or they marry. They want to leave home in haste. So we want to find out from you as young people, what is the push factor? This concept of toxic homes. Why are you running away from home? What is the problem with the home environment? Are there homes which we can really say they are toxic? If they are there, why are homes toxic? Whom am I starting with? Yes.
Okay, I think generally African homes are toxic because we find that with parents, right? To start with parents, it's like a continuous cycle. They are manipulative. Parents are always right. When they are angry at you, they don't even explain. They give you the silent treatment. They do. So toxic homes usually are African homes because you do not have a say. What the parent says goes. So that creates a toxic environment where you cannot share your emotions, where you cannot share your ideas or your feelings about certain issues.
Actually, when we're talking, I go to think that we might need to understand, what do you mean by toxic environment? Who can define that for us? Who can define? Yes, what to define?
Okay. By toxic, we mean it's not conducive for you to be you. You're not free to be yourself when you're in that environment. You don't feel like you're able to grow. The environment is not good for you to thrive mentally, physically, economically. You just cannot do it in that environment.
So you're saying there are homes where a child cannot thrive physically, mentally?
I just wanted to add from the point that she raised that it also refers to an environment that is harmful, negative, and also that is detrimental to one's well-being.
This is serious. A harmful environment. Homes are supposed to be nurturing to whoever is in that environment. But we are hearing young people saying that their environments, their homes, which are harmful, which are detrimental to the well-being. Probably we'll find out from them it's the well-being of children, it's the well-being of everyone in that home. But just to point to the fact that these are very serious definitions. Yes.
Okay, I wanted to say that in some homes, for it to be toxic, maybe you're staying with people who do drugs. You can't really enlarge your territory in such an environment. There are some homes where, to them, their language is violence. And in most cases, in our African homes, our parents were socialized in such a way that everything that they did, they will be beaten up for speaking up, they'll be beaten up for being silent, they'll be beaten up for not eating, for almost everything. And then they get that to say that they are supposed to nurture their homes in such a way also. I'll give you a simple example, personal experience. I remember at some point, I was informed too, a friend came to our house and she was there for less than 30 minutes and she was like, is this your mother or is your stepmother? To me, now come to think of it, yes, I understand that my mother was trying to instill something beneficial for me, but when I was growing up then, it was sort of toxic. And then also the idea of most people who were raised by, let's say, single parents, they want to be the father and the mother at the same time. And in trying to bridge that gap, they are bringing toxicity in that. In that environment. Not only that, there is also the idea of favoritism. Parents may favor one child against the other children, or because you think this one is intelligent academically, and maybe I'm not intelligent academically, but I'm intelligent in sports, I may end up being forced to be also academically intelligent. So that's also an area of being in a toxic environment.
So it comes to the question which I wanted to ask. What is happening in your homes or in homes which you can say this is toxic? Huh? What is happening? Give us more examples. Yes, Kathy, then I'll come to you.
All right. In these homes, we are also looking at the parenting styles that our parents are using. We are looking at a case where the primary communication is yelling, name calling, punishment, or silent treatment. So you literally have to tell from the moods that maybe I've done something wrong. It's all left up to you. We're also looking at a home where my compliance is inspired by fear of maybe being chased away at home, maybe name calling. It's actually inspired by just a fear of maybe I'm going to be deprived of some privileges as a child. We're also looking at a home where I cannot lodge my resentment as a child because the parents are always right. And I'm sure my peers can actually agree with me that maybe 1 in 50 African parents can actually recall a situation and apologize to their child. In all the cases, the parent is right. So I have to bury my emotions, bury my resentment, and all I can do is to wait to leave home.
Are these things happening in homes? Yes.
Yes, they are. I just wanted to bring us back just a few steps when you asked us what the meaning of toxicity is. I feel like in our generation, the word toxic has been misused, so to say. The problem that we have is in this day and age, we are being raised as princesses, both boys and girls. You think just because you have a curfew, you're living in a toxic home. Just because you come back home after curfew and you get a beating, you are living in a toxic home. Just because your parents have rules in their home, you're living in a toxic home. Or just because you think you want to study music in grade 6 and your parents are advising against it, you think it's a toxic home. That's not toxic, that's just basic human lifestyle, so to say. So I just think that we really need, that's one thing that we need to make sure we pin right up there. When we're talking about toxic homes, we're speaking to homes that are detrimental to your development, not to your comfort.
So Kathy is bringing another angle that yes, there are homes which are toxic, but she's talking about sometimes what you may think is being toxic is just rules that are being set by parents, and it depends on how you are handling or receiving the rules. You might end up thinking this is toxic. Yes.
Another example of toxic homes is coming from past hits of parents. I know of an example of someone who was born out of wedlock, and then their mother was telling them hurtful stuff to say, it's because of you that I got married to this man, to such an extent that she had to leave home. But it wasn't because of her wanting to leave home, but it was actually toxic for her to stay in that environment.
Your hand was up.
I think when we look at toxicity, mainly nowadays and the modernity, when we're looking back in the times where we had our grandfathers and our fathers, maybe our fathers were in the 1950s up to the 1970s, and now we have changes, the dynamic world. So in terms of toxicity, we are looking at parents who have what we call tough love. And this type of love is the love that works, that get things done. But it does have a detrimental effects. to us as individuals in a family setup, because it might have what we call selfish ulterior motives. Because let's say maybe a mother or a father or a step parent might not have been able to reach a certain target when he or she was young. They might try to maybe change a career for someone. Let's say my father was a doctor, but I do not want to be a doctor. I will now need to be suited as to learn to become a doctor. So even if I do not want to learn about the doctor, those maths, the physics, the chemistries,
You're
the
pushed by
biology.
the parent.
Yeah.
Because they are saying our lineage is of doctors,
Yeah.
so you should become a doctor. So the environment becomes toxic because they are being forced to do what you don't want to do. Because
I have a different thinking. What are we comparing our homes with? Which homes are we comparing where we stay with? So she was actually answering it. She was saying in our African homes, So it means maybe we are comparing our African homes with a certain type of lifestyle, maybe a Western type of lifestyle. So I want us to look back. Let's concentrate on our African homes. Let's not compare our homes with anyone else's homes. Let's compare our homes with what we have as Africans. So
if anything that is toxic which is happening in our African homes, because it's you as young people who are saying our homes are what? Are toxic.
Yes.
So tell us the toxicity of your African home.
yes, so what I would say that might be toxic in our African setup is getting raped. You get a culture where a young girl is supposed to sleep with an elderly person, and then later on, when they grow up, they want to get married, and it actually affects their marriage. That's toxic in our African.
Okay, so you're talking about sometimes there are abuses which happens in our homes, and yes, you're saying that environment is what?
It's
Is toxic. Okay, which end? Did you? Okay.
Okay, I wanted to say
Then I'll
that
come to
the other thing that is toxic about African homes is the way we communicate. And I think it's been handed down to us over the ages. Because I remember my mother saying that she never used to sit down with her dad and talk about anything, really. You'd just be like, so how was school? School was fine. So where are your results? That's that. So now, because the times are changing and everything, we are in a situation where we need to communicate. But our parents got this thing from way back that kids and parents are not friends, we don't talk. We talk about business. So now there's a lot of gaslighting that goes around, because when you try to tell them how you're feeling and your reality, they deny it. They're like, no, you're ungrateful. I've been doing this and that for you. But that is not what I want. Can you please just let me communicate what I want? And then you can guide me through that. There's no communication in African homes, and that's toxic.
Communication.
I just want to add on communication to say that as we're growing up, we used to be told everything and we didn't question anything. But as you grow up, you start to question everything. So I think our parents, they don't have that balance to see my child is now grown and they are now starting to question things, which to them then becomes a problem. I think there's a Shona saying, which to them,
Not two cocks.
yeah, they cannot be two cocks in one. So that's another toxicity that then comes when they feel that when you are grown, why then are you questioning?
We are already talking about what causes a home to be toxic. Yeah, you're talking about the causes. Yes, Amanda, then I'll go to you.
I want to get back to what my brother said about what are we comparing something to. Where maybe you were taught that meat, when you were growing up, you were told, meat is not eaten by kids. But when you grow up, you see, but meat is nice. That's just an example. So we've been playing on our mental health for a very long time, and we've normalized something that is wrong. So when someone starts talking about, I've got low self-esteem, that's when you realize that when my mother or my uncle was saying, "Zimusoro re munhu rinenge kushata kunge hanzi kushata kunge panze," what that was. So you can't stand in front of people, right, and say confidently because you are now thinking about how someone was calling you ugly. So parents have normalized, or the African homes have normalized name calling as something, as a way of disciplining. We've got the guilty, they play the guilt card. You give a parent money, now you want it back. Sakayo, when you, from childhood to adulthood, what do you think you were eating? Was it your money? So now, as a child, you see, they play the guilt card on you. That's being toxic.
I raised you from napkins
to now you are
want
telling
to-
me about your money.
Okay.
I think for me, it comes in the form of absenteeism. Adding on to Sandra's point, we realize that now I can get home and then everyone is on their phone, including my parents. So we're talking to people who are so far and yet we're leaving people who are near. And also absenteeism comes in the form of now in the economy that we're living in, many people are resorting to leaving the country. So you realize that I am now the deputy parent because my parents are busy working so that we get the life that we want. So it has become toxic to a certain extent because I have to grow up fast. I have to make very bold decisions at a very young age, and I don't get that support from my parents.
Serious discussions here. Young people now forced to become, I think this term is now very common, deputy parent. They are stepping in the shoes of a parent before they become a parent, and they are having a heavy load on their shoulders, and this to them is a toxic environment. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Young People. We are still talking about toxic homes. Before we went for break, there were lots of hands from young people. Tell us, what do you think? What is happening in homes? Yes, Kathy?
I think the problem that we're having is we are growing up in a cycle where as children we experience toxicity, and because we don't know anything better, the cycle continues. So I think the importance is for us to raise awareness and also cut some slack to our parents, because most of them, they don't know better. They were raised, most of the older generation, there was a lot of barika talk, the two-wife situation, and there's always lack of love at the others, and there's a lot of hatred and evilness that's going on, and they grew up under that. So we also need to sympathize and also be somewhat understanding to come to realize that sometimes it's not that they want to be toxic, they just don't know any better.
Okay, good point. Good point from there, Kathy. Yes?
Okay, another example is growing up in a family where you are told saying sorry is a sign of weakness. You can't say sorry to anyone or anybody. And also, maybe from what he has said.
We want you to say sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. From the other thing also, from what he has mentioned that only sexual abuse is the only thing which is toxic. There are times when physical abuse, emotional abuse is also toxic. And also the other thing is, in most families, African families, to say I love you is weird. You act it out, you don't say it. That's toxic.
Parents, we are being blamed for our shortcomings. We need to say I love you so that the environment is not toxic. I go to you, I'll come there. Okay?
All right, Tati, I wanted to respond to Kosi and say emotions are not ethnic. So we can't really come to say we are comparing our African homes to maybe Western homes. Emotions and character bruises are not ethnic. So if something is wrong, it's wrong, whether in an African home or in a Western home. So then also zero in on what he said on tough love. We are talking about our parents inflicting physical pain for me to understand that what I've done is wrong. So now we are now comparing this with the Western home. maybe I'm going to get counts or warnings. Number 1, you did this. Number 2, you did this. Number 3, we did this. I'll also speak about my own experience. I'm still bitter about it. I kept talking to my mom about it. Where I would forget to flush the toilet. So I would get beaten all the time about it. Sometimes I would not get beaten about the toilet, but maybe in the evening I failed to finish my food. I'm going to get a beating for that. So now in the end, the talk is, it's because I love you. This is why I'm beating you. So now I'm going to grow up and think that anyone who beats me, they love me. So a man is even going to beat me and is going to be okay with me because that is love. So now we're saying if maybe my mom was going to be giving me warnings and counts, I would know that, you know what, today I got a beating because I did this,
Is
and that.
beating your child love? Children are now confused when they grow older and they begin to be abused by someone else, they will still believe it's love. Your hand was up, then I'll come to you.
Yes, I wanted to comment on the causes and characteristics of toxicity, and to what she was talking about. She talked about something to do with poor communication. We are living in an age whereby challenging our normal existence is some kind of a taboo, and it's something that is not accepted. So if you challenge what she's saying, you're challenging the abnormal, you're being beaten. It's a taboo. So now that leads us to toxic relationships. And some of the characteristics that are there, they're caused by, besides poor communication, there is lack of support. In our African tradition, generally, we were taught that the sky is the limit. That's from school. But in our African tradition, the roof is the limit. You can't go above the roof. So the moment that you want to go above the roof, someone will pull you down. So that's a toxic environment, and we have accepted it as it is. So it affects, and it continues to be a cycle, time and time again. And another thing I think that I wanted to mention was constant criticism. So that can lead again to toxic relationship. And unfortunately, this becomes a cycle that is unending at the end of the day. And that will affect even our children, even our children's children.
It was going to be interesting to really know about who pulls who down in a home environment, because I think that's something that we should also explore. Yes.
All right. There's an issue of our parents not understanding about mental health issues and depression to such an extent that when you are suffering from the effects of depression, let's say you just feel like being in your room and not talking to anyone and all that, they'll then start to misunderstand that, to say, why are you staying in your own room? Because une depression, like they don't really understand what you're going through. So I think they also need to learn about other mental health issues that we're facing. And then the other thing is that of black tax. I think people should just give their children some, maybe a few years to enjoy the fruits of their labor before they start asking them for money, because you end up not having anything to yourself that you own, because you constantly have to be providing something at home, or maybe your grandparents or someone else. So I think they need to understand that as well.
So when we're asking our children for money, the environment has become toxic. Huh? Yes.
Some homes are toxic because some of our parents, they have trauma. They experienced trauma. I would give an example of war trauma, and then they start behaving like they are in a war. Then the home becomes a war zone. So to me, it's very unfortunate that, yeah, my father is always seeing every word that I'm speaking is like a bullet, and is ready to actually shield it. They don't want to hear anything from me. Then the other thing also that might be toxic is failing to realize, who am I in the family? We might try to blame parents that they are toxic, but also on ourselves as an individual, you might be toxic.
Okay, so we want to understand from you as young people, what are the effects then? I think you've been saying a lot of things that parents, I can see that the war veterans that you're talking about, they are thinking that they're in the war zone all the time with you at home. What are the effects of all this on you as young people? We want to understand, what are the effects? How is it affecting you?
It messes up your relationships. Because you are coming from in an environment where you have to be hyper vigilant. You're hyper vigilant everywhere. Since you've been trained to be a war vet, you're a war vet everywhere. Even in your romantic relationships, you just want to be, always on guard, trying to fight. Why is this happening? So it's just unhealthy.
We are creating a smaller war veteran. Yeah, what are the effects? Then you come to.
Okay, I think we are now a generation which is less compassionate. There are people say, we show them too much love. So we are now less compassionate towards other people's problems or towards other people's issues. We say, we treat mental health issues, so we are less compassionate to the other people's circumstances.
Is an effect of a toxic home. Yeah.
I also think that the issue of self-beautification then comes to play. It might also be an issue of toxicity.
Toxic home.
Homes whereby you feel you have a low self-esteem on yourself. So low self-esteem is another form of, another effect of toxic homes.
I wanted to mention, there was a princess statement that I heard there somewhere about how your parents, they're always criticizing you. I don't condone that parents need to be encouraging, but people also need to realize that one day you're going to leave your parents' house. And if you're not doing things right, you better learn, and you better learn it from people you love, because the world is heartless. It's ruthless. It will not pad things up for you so that you feel better. So that is another effect that can actually be counted as toxicity, because you're so protected when you go to the world, you can't make it. That's also very toxic, because now you're a weakling in the world, and the world will come after you with no mercy.
So you're seeing some good in the toxicity that sometimes you call it toxic, but we're trying to shape you so that you can be able to face the outer world as a strong person.
Yes.
Okay, Marco?
I would like to agree with my counterpart here. It's very weird that young adults or young teens are starting to think that they know better than their parents. In the wild, you won't find a lion cub saying, I want milk, I don't want meat, right? Why? Because the lioness knows exactly what's good for the cub. But we are at a stage where we think we know better than our parents because we're being taught something else by someone else who does not have our best interests. So we're quick to say, no, what I'm hearing from the outside is better than what you're telling me. So I'm going to pick whatever they're saying, and then I'm going to compare it to what you've been teaching me. Right.
So this is the flip side where Marco is saying, sometimes we need to listen. Sometimes we need to endure. Yeah? Because some of the things that parents are doing are for your own good. They're all for your own good. It's just to balance it. It's just to balance it. Thank you, Marco. Then I'll come to you.
Mine is a cause and effect. The cause being one of the toxic things that we find in our families is, I don't know to what extent we should relate to people who are like our relatives. So we find sometimes my sister's husband is my husband. So they say, hug him, he's your husband. Or Sekuru, give Sekuru a kiss, he's your Sekuru. And the effect becomes rape in families, or there are so many effects that then come with that kind of relationship. So to what extent do we go with this whole relative thing in the African culture?
This is an important question, which you want to pick with the parents when they come here. Toxic homes in the form of Chiramu. Is my sister's husband my husband? Please don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Young People. It's a hot topic, toxic homes. So help me to welcome the parents. Welcome Mrs. Tsikada. And welcome Mr. Manyanga. Young people say he is representing the fathers and she's representing the mothers. There was a hot question which came from the young people before we went for the break. And I'm happy that you are here because we are going to give you that question for you to answer. But before we go there, we want to find out from you as parents. Young people are talking about toxic homes. And it looks like the parents somehow are the major culprits in this saga. So I want to find out from you. Yes, this always been there, or is a new concept? Is it something that was common during your time that a home is called toxic, or it's something that is coming on board? I don't know. Should we call it AMA 2000 a term, or is something that is common?
Thank you. I think the reality is that toxicity exists in our homes, and I'm particularly happy that young people are really speaking about it. So it boils down to three things, in my view. The first, as they actually articulated, the issue of communication, and then the second issue is the lack of love. So then the third issue is actually the way boundaries, if they are not set in the homes between parents and children, it also then creates a conducive environment for toxicity. Lastly, I wanted to say, when it's how you view what is happening as a child or as a parent, when you understand that this person loves me, but the behavior or the attitude towards my life is unacceptable, it's harming me, but he loves me. So the moment you view it that way, it becomes easier to deal with it. My own father, I respect him so much, he's my hero, but he used to call me useless. And it affected me so much. But I knew, how can someone who hates me and calls me useless but pays school fees for me? He feeds me. He buys me a bicycle when I want it. But his words are harmful. And then I had to analyze it and understand that my father loves me. The way he is communicating with me, I could see it in his own father. So I'm seeing a cycle. And then I had to create that conducive environment to discuss with my father, to say, I understand I make mistakes, but the way you communicate with me affects me. And he came back to me a week later and said, you know what you told me affected me. I actually cried because I didn't know that I was dealing with you in this way. So communication is important.
Communication is important. And I like the fact that fathers are acknowledging that sometimes the actions which they do can harm a child. But how do we remove that is through communication. Mrs. Tsikada, toxic homes.
Thank you, Tete. Firstly, I would like to say toxicity has always been there. Mainly because we are human beings. Whenever there are people, like even how we are sitting, there's bound to be conflict. And conflict results in toxicity, depending on how we deal with it. We also have what we can call enablers, or people who make toxicity to come about. For example, when we're growing up, our parents were vouching for peace. So they'd rather, sugarcoat any mishaps that are going on within the family for the sake of peace. But we call it enabling in the sense that the person who's being the abuser or the person who we may call the perpetrator continues in their bad way because this other person is covering up for who? For them. And I also allude to lack of emotional attachment. I think some of you alluded to the fact that we as Africans, it's very difficult to tell my child, I love you. Or ndinokuda. Ukatomudza, they'll actually say, what? They don't even know how to respond because we were also brought up that way. There was no room for me to air how I feel about anything. You were just told if you're in my house, you don't have feelings. You just have to exist. And so that is how toxicity comes into being. Because when I'm unable to express how I feel, when my feelings are repressed, I then get depressed. And also issues of low self-esteem come about when that emotional attachment is not available between the parent and their children. When I can't tell my child, you're beautiful. When I can't tell my child, you're a star. When I can't tell my child, well done, it all boils down to low self-esteem. So I can say it was there, and for us, it was worse because our parents would never say, well done, my child, or anything. They'll just keep quiet. So we are actually relearning that so that we are now able to tell our children to affirm them so that they can also boost their self-esteem. So I'd like to
just
say
a quick
yes.
question to you parents. either one of you. So is there anything that a parent can do probably as a way of trying to instill discipline in their child, and then it is misunderstood as toxic?
Yes, sometimes, well, it depends on what age group of children we are looking at. If it's the younger toddlers, sometimes corporal punishment is okay. Sometimes reinforcement is fine. But as for the youths, they should be ground for us to have a conversation, because you're now grown up. Someone was talking about questioning. You now question why we do certain things, why I should not do this. We should then open room for conversation, and that way we are able to change the environment.
Questioning is wrong, but probably trying to understand. There's a difference between questioning something and trying to get an explanation, trying to make me understand. I'm not questioning, but I want to understand why. Over to you, young people. Questions or anything that you want clarification from the parents. I'll start with you, Marco, then I'll come to you, Indu.
I would like to slightly disagree with one of the parents. Forgive me. There's an English proverb that says, weak men create hard times create strong men, and strong men create good times. And the stronger your skin, the less scars you have. So if we coddle these kids and then we let them grow up to be people who were always in a bubble, they did not experience actual problems because it was too toxic for them to succeed or whatever they thought they needed, they will end up being nuisances in society, right? Because they were not taught properly with the stick.
So you're actually saying sometimes the stick is good.
Sometimes the toxicity is great.
My question to the parents.
Just that comment, then you put it together, yeah?
Okay, my question to the parents is, they said that we should be able to talk to each other. Eh? How far are they willing to sit down and listen? Because as far as I know, communication with parents is them telling me what I've done wrong and what to do right. Not communication in the sense that I actually tell them how I feel. And so how far are you guys willing to listen to what we say? Because you're just dismissive.
How far are you willing to listen? Get that one. That's the first question. That one was not a question. It was a comment. Another question so that they can, another quick question. Okay?
I think we
That's a question?
Yeah, it's a question. Okay. We as the youths experience quite a number of things when we are young, when we are growing up. There are these hormones we have. There are things like the heartbreaks, the heartaches, and at times when you're at work, the toxicity level of things that happen. So at times you might come to a parent or a dad, and when you try to express what has happened throughout the day, they might give you a silent treatment. Mm-hmm. And as well some body language gestures where you say, I'm not saying it's wrong, either am I saying it's right, but there has to be a certain level of open communication required from our parents.
How far are you willing to learn? And the cold shoulders.
Like in every form of relationships, anything done out of love eventually wins. So I'm willing to learn as a parent, as much as you continuously express what you say to me. Lastly, I need to tell you something from the Bible. The Bible says, honor your father and mother. No matter how bad I am, that honor will eventually change me.
Parents are accepting that they also have got a weakness, but they're also willing to learn to listen. Yeah?
I'm going to answer the gentleman there who was asking why we sometimes give you silent treatment when you need to vent. Remember, we're also human beings. Sometimes I also have my pressures. So it's also important for you to understand how I'm feeling on that particular day. I'm also loaded. And then you come to vent. Sometimes I'll not be able to appreciate how you're feeling, but that doesn't mean I do not care. When you realize that, there should be room that next time you come and we address that issue again. Like I said, we are parents. We want to relearn from what our parents went through so that we can become better parents.
We are on young people.
Say,
please don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to young people. We are happy to welcome two new faces to the set. We've got Pastor Manyepa. Welcome, Pastor Manyepa. And we have got Mrs. Suspense, who is a professional counselor. Welcome. We're talking about toxic homes. Young people is very balanced. They're talking about homes which are not conducive for their well-being. And they were looking at reasons why, what are the causes, and the effects of such an environment to their well-being as young people. So we want to hear from you, Pastor Manyepa. Because when the father who was here representing fathers, he said a statement that honor your father and your mother. And that is the only, can you call it a commandment or a rule that has got a promise of long life. So young people were really on him to say, but the Bible also talks about what?
Do not anger your children.
Do not anger your children. So what do you say about it, Pastor? Young people are talking about they are living in homes which they are calling there is toxic environment. And I don't know whether such homes are found in the Bible or what you can be able to say from a clergy's point of view to the young people when it comes to environments which are not conducive for their well-being.
Thank you, Tete Makoi. I've got a mouthful on this topic. First of all, on this commandment, fifth commandment, which says honor your father and your mother. By the way, this commandment, the way I look at this commandment, it's not to children, but it speaks to the parents first, before it even speaks to the children. The children in this picture are kind of hidden because of the title, father and your mother. But the father and mother is the one who is being addressed. Honor your father and your mother. How can you honor something that is not honorable? That's the first question we must ask yourself when you look at that commandment. So that commandment is speaking to parents first. Be honorable. Be in a position where your children can honor you. Or else parents can be a curse to their children. Right? I've got actually a verse on that one. That's my point now. You asked me if there are examples in the Bible. I'll come to that one. But first of all, let me address the theological aspect. Remember the last prophecy or the last message in the Old Testament from Malachi chapter 4, verse 5, the last verse. It says, "They shall arise the prophet Elijah. His mandate is to draw the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers. If that doesn't happen, God will smite the earth with a curse." So, our challenge here, I heard the talk. Children are bitter. Their hearts are not with their parents. They are not attached to their parents. The parents also are pointing fingers at the children as the ones also causing a toxic home. The hearts of the parents are not with their children. Hence, they can leave their children go abroad without noticing that they are making their children grow faster than their age. You see, Jesus also preached that message while he was hanging on the cross, right? That's John chapter 19, verse 26 and 27. Jesus says, "Mother, behold thy son. Son, behold thy mother." And immediately, the beloved disciples took care of the mother. Jesus, while hanging on the cross in that painful state, he spared some time to give us the last message. Mothers, take care of your children. Children, take care of your mothers.
Whilst you're there, Pastor, the young people are actually saying, the black tax, parents, they want us to take care of them, but we want space to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor before I start sharing. But you're talking about, son, take care of your mother. They're saying it's toxic, what you're talking about, Pastor.
Well, yeah, I wanted now to give you examples in the Bible. Actually, I found it stunning. that in the Bible, many examples that are in the Bible are children being toxic in the homes rather than parents being toxic in the homes. Talk of Adam and Eve, it was Cain who was toxic. Talk of the prophet Eli, the children were toxic. Talk of Samson and his parents, it was Samson toxic. Talk of whoever you want to
So
talk
Pastor,
of.
you're saying, in short, okay, I'm not concluding for you. You're actually telling the children that sometimes toxicity in the home can also be caused by the children themselves.
Yes.
Let's put a finger there. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. Thank you, Pastor Manipa. We'll come back to it. I know your hands are already up. We'll come back to it. Or let's talk about it before I give to Miss Suspense. Whom am I starting with now? Okay, here and you, yeah.
Me and my one line are saying these children don't raise themselves. So Hophni and Phineas didn't raise themselves. Eli is to blame.
Pastor, get that one?
Okay, after he explained what he explained, I'm now embarrassed about everything I was saying. I might be toxic and thinking that the parents are toxic.
Okay, you're actually seeing also that sometimes we look at one side of the coin, we need to look at the other side of the coin. That what you may call toxic is actually parents trying to help you as young people.
Biblical example of when a parent was toxic. Remember the story of Amnon and Tamar? The children, this one raped the other child. The father did nothing. For a full year, Absalom was bitter. But he was waiting for the father to do something. The father did nothing until he committed murder. Because the father did nothing, he showed favoritism. So yes, the parents are also to blame.
So I think you are in agreement with the pastor, because the pastor started on parents who are what? Toxic. But then he also pointed out to children who are what? Who are toxic. Marco?
Just to maybe agree and also disagree with what Pastor said. We are all victims of circumstance, right? Both our parents and us. Our parents are also kids at one point. And we know that kids don't learn anything from anywhere else other than from the parents themselves, because they just copy and paste, right? So whatever fruits we present, they're coming from the tree. And the tree is our parents and then our grandparents, and it goes back.
Pastor, yeah, hearing that the hands are too many, because I want to ask another question to Miss Suspense and also give you and you.
Okay, just to give an example of parents who were toxic, we have an example of Rebecca, Isaac and Rebecca. We see that Rebecca was toxic to Esau. Imagine if you were Esau and the other person is being favored and your blessings are actually going to him instead of yourself.
Toxicity in parents.
I wanted to ask.
So, Pastor, young people are saying that which was in the Bible, they are reliving it again as young people.
How do I address to a parent who everyone else, including myself in the family and everyone else in the family, can tell that my mother is full of trauma. She's traumatic. And she cannot actually accept that she has trauma. How do I deal with it? How do I address that to her such that she can understand where I am coming from?
Miss Suspense, you answer that one. Actually, I want to add on what he's talking about so that you can answer, then you give it back to the pastor to say, Mrs. Suspense, what are the other effects from your point of view of a counselor that you have dealt with, which you can be able to attribute to a toxic home? And you can actually also add, answer his question again, is you're talking about the effects of a toxic home to a young person.
Okay. First, let me answer his question. Let me answer his question first. Actually, there's a young man who phoned me about a month ago who was talking about his mother who was toxic at home. He said, please help my mother because my mother is toxic at home. So I had a chance to phone the mother, and I spoke to the mother, and I've been having sessions with that mother. And that mother, she happened to be an SDA mother as well. and now she's in a better place. So children are in a position to be able to help their parents if you discover that there's some toxicity in your parent, because you cannot handle it on your own. You need something. She needs healing because of the trauma that she suffered. And sometimes parents are not able to speak to their children or even to some of their close relatives about the circumstances of the situations that traumatized them. So if they speak to a therapist, they are able to resolve that trauma. Okay, and yeah, thank you. And then your next question, Tetema.
Of a toxic home in general.
Okay. Effects of a toxic home, they're actually far-reaching. There are immediate effects and then long-term effects of a toxic home. The immediate effects are anxiety and stress. The children in the home, they are often stressed, they are anxious, they are not sure about what to do, and also they lose their self-esteem and they have low, self-esteem in a toxic home. There is a stifling of growth, psychological growth, because as human beings, we are always moving towards something, towards higher levels of attainment in our psychological growth. So when a home is toxic, there's that stifling of that psychological, growth, where somebody is not able to reach their full potential. And there's also their needs, unmet needs. There's a lot of unmet needs in that home because the child or the members of the family, they cannot express fully their needs in that home. There's a poor communication in that home, and there are, loose boundaries. There are no boundaries in those homes, and there's poor communication. So they're actually far-reaching. And then the psychological effects of a toxic home is that we are going to have dysfunctional young men, dysfunctional young women, and dysfunctional marriages. Because these people are going to go into marriages as well. They are going to go into the workplace. Sometimes when you're in the workplace, you will say, this one is queer. This one, the way they behave at work, I don't know what's wrong with them. It's the result, you are products of our environment, isn't it? It's the result of the home that was toxic. So they cannot reach their full potential. They didn't develop well, it is stifled. They were always anxious and depressed sometimes. So they are then toxic in the environment, even in the workplace, and even as a husband or a wife.
Thank you.
Some of the abuses that we see in society, they are results of toxic homes where children were traumatized in their formative years when they were very young.
That's a passionate topic. I can see so close to your heart. One young person said, I was pushed into drugs because of a toxic environment in my home. It pushed me into drugs. So you are right there, Miss Suspense. There was a hand. Anyone? Any quick question? Was your hand up, Ida? Or it was him? Okay. Okay. You and you quickly.
I'm just thinking that this issue of toxicity is to be resolved from an equilibrium position from both parties, from our side and also from the side of parents, because there's a thought that just came into my mind, which is to say that parents, your children that you have, it's an exact and perfect reflection of the other person in you have ignored. Are you getting that? So I think we need to come to a point whereby we make a consensus, a level of communication, and then we resolve this.
Okay, my contribution is more to the church, to the pastor. We noticed that before people get married, they get premarital counseling. Is it correct? What measures do you take before people become parents? Because we are seated here talking about something that is happening, coming from parenthood. You prepare people for marriage, but never for actually the reason why our society is upside down.
Difficult question. Are you preparing people for being parents or just for marriage? And Pastor, we want you to also wrap up this in a minute or two to say, can this toxicity be changed? What can we be able to do? What advice can you give to both young people and parents out there? Repeat, Pastor.
Thank you so much. First of all, maybe to answer her question, indeed, people should be prepared for marriage, and marriage is holistic. We are talking about a family. Mm-hmm. So I think you are right. Sometimes we emphasize more on the two of them and not talking about the time when kids are there, right? But I feel that we address that when we preach other sermons, that people should be converted, should be transformed. You know, our problem is the sin problem. The devil is so cunning that he wants to attack families because he knows once he attacks families, he has attacked the church. He has attacked the community, and the world is in disarray. So, because his strategies are so many, so now we are just talking in an umbrella term because of our time here. But indeed, we should prepare people for family, for a family.
And as we wrap up
Yes.
the toxic environment, what advice can you give in a minute?
Yes, indeed. I want to say that we have come up with programs like this to help people, to conscientize even our youth, that maybe you may be one person who is taking things, or you may be the weak link of your family. The devil is using you to penetrate into your family. Have you ever noticed that pastors' children are castigated? Sometimes not because the pastor is wrong, but because the devil saw a weak link in the children, in the children or in the child. At the same time, parents also can be the weak link. So we want everybody in the home to be strong. You know, when we used to grow up, we used to play games. You know, no one should be the weak link of the home. Both children, and you shouldn't be the entry point of the devil in the home. I want to end by giving you an illustration of Lot's family. What did Lot do wrong? Yes, Lot had weaknesses, and the children capitalized on the weaknesses of the parents. There are some times when our parents are so engrossed and depressed because of the workplaces, the environment we live in. They have so much pressure, and our children take note of that, and they take advantage of that, bringing toxicity in the home. So this is not about pointing fingers. It's about working together. The heart of the children should be connected to the heart of the parents. I wanted also maybe to end by saying a psychologist kind of help us in this manner. It's good that we have so many psychologists in our church. Not everything needs prayers. Sometimes you need therapy. Even Jesus sometimes would take people into places. You know why Jesus would take people into the mountain? He would take people into the boat. He would say, let's cruise over. Let's do this. It was psychotherapy. Sometimes you would, heal people not just by the word. You would do that. But sometimes you would make mortar, put in the eyes and say, go and wash. He would do that so that we not only depend on miracles, but also find help and counseling.
There you are. We are on young people. Toxic environments in our homes can be changed for the better. Let's improve on communication. Let's pray about our homes. But at the same time, where you need help, whether it's a parent or it's a child, let us go and seek help and therapy, because it's good for the environment of the home. We believe, and we strongly believe, that this episode, this session, is helped one or two homes. We are promising you more topics in the next sessions here on Young People Say. From me, Tete Makoe. Bye-bye.
Sokora kanaka murese pasi kuti vanhu vese ngaridzveri uyo unoda tumasoko pagomone mikana baba wadikanwa pari kudaidza uyo unoda uyo unouya nasi uya pinda pamusiwo wazarurirwa Jesu ndiye nzira ye ndiye masoko pago monemikana baba wadikanwa ari kudaiza uyo unoda uyo unoda dawira ini uyo unoda tiwirange iswi uyo unoda upenyu darini uyo unoda uyo unoda tumasoko pango monemikana baba odikano ari kudaiza uyo unoda soko pago monemikana baba wadikanwa ari kudaiza uyo unoda baba wadikanwa ari kudaiza uyo unoda